Hello, I'm Mary Ryan from Right Hand HR. So if you have any queries at all, please don't hesitate to give me a call. I am on 086 822 5448. And thank you to the Chamber for inviting me to this webinar today. So, a number of questions have arisen in the last few weeks since the outbreak of COVID-19. So, I'm just here to address some of those queries that you might be coming up against now. One of the issues is employees are refusing to come back to work. So you've been closed for a while, you've put them on temporary layoff, but all of a sudden you're able to open up on a scaling situation. So you're inviting employees to come back to work, and some employees might be reluctant to work. Maybe they're reluctant to use public transport or to work with colleagues, and so they may choose to self-isolate and not attend work. Also, you may have employees from other countries who had relocated for work and may wish to return to their home countries to be close to their family there. So the issues for the employee to consider would be, are there any factors which justify the action of not coming back to work? Can employees be required to attend work as normal? Or do employees continue to be paid if they are not attending work? So the advice from a HR point of view would be to see if the risk factors, if they're justified by the employees, and if they do need to self-isolate. See if you can avail of some of the other options so that they can retain payments such as working from home, if that's possible, looking at some type of leave, for example, annual leave or paternity leave or parental leave, making sure that you are if you're able to facilitate the employee in any way. But once you have done your risk analysis and you feel that no, you do need that employee to come back to work, and you have mitigated all the risk factors that may be stopping them from coming back to work, well then they should come back to work. So it's very important to have consistency in your approach, because you have to consider the whole workforce, and you want to make sure that you have been consistent in your thought process and your justification for whatever decision you make. So you might want to update your coronavirus risk assessment. You must be able to establish whether there are adequate safeguards in place to reduce the risk of employee contacting the virus, and particularly those employees who may be particularly vulnerable to contacting the virus. That would be employees with pre-existing respiratory issues, older employees, or employees who are pregnant. The next question that has been brought up, employees, they need time off because there's a lack of childcare facilities available for them. Again, this is a common challenge facing employees with childcare facilities, because the childcare facilities the children went to are closed, and grandparents are not able to look after the children. They may be self-isolating as well. So again, issues to consider for these employees that have got childcare issues would be, is this a type of family leave you want to give? Should the employees continue to be paid? Employees should consider maybe adjusting or reducing working hours and changing work times to assist employees in managing work and increase childcare responsibilities. Family leave options, again, like I spoke about earlier, paternity leave, parental leave, or parents' leave, or perhaps force majeure leave might be options to explore. So, again, maybe talk to the employees, see what they have, what situation they have got. Is there a way of, staggering the shifts so they can work when their partner is home to look after the children, and just kind of be, empathetic to their situation. And if you can all help, if you can avail of that or help them out in any way, it would be good to do so. So another option could be permitting employees to remain on pay in exchange for an agreement to work additional hours at a later time in the year. May work in some instances. It won't suit everyone, but it's just look at the whole bandwidth of options that you may have. Think outside the box and see what options you can come up with. So again, another action to do is to review your annual leave and family leave entitlements for all employees. Review working from home or flexible working policies to ensure they are fit for purpose. I imagine a lot of employers didn't have working from home policies because this all happened so quickly. So it is something you may need to put in place now to ensure that the health and safety of the employees is safe to work at home as well. Managing and communicating with employees remotely. For some employers, this has been a whole new experience, especially for maybe the SMEs where they didn't have the options to work from home before. So, it's really important now to have an effective communication policy and start to think about the employees, because you're not going to be close to the employees now to see how they're feeling, read their, the signs of someone having a bad day or not. So it's important that, you're again aware of how the employee is doing and ensuring that the employee is comfortable in working at home. And, I've been on many videos in the last few weeks where I've seen children running in and out behind the webinars or the Zoom meetings and stuff. Everyone's in the same boat, so that's okay, and it's saying to the employee, it's okay, we understand that this is not the norm, so we'll work with you in any situation you've got. So again, consider for how to communicate effectively with the employees. How can productivity and motivation be maintained? Another important one. And are there any data protection restrictions applicable to communicating data related to COVID-19. So you still have a lot of, your policies to be in place, best practices to still be in place. So in order to ensure business continuity, employees must take steps to put good communication systems in place with employees so that important messages are being received by all the employees and that workforce flow can be reviewed as normal. Assign responsibility maybe to a certain member to ensure that all employees are being communicated with. Communication with employees is particularly important during this time to confirm what is expected to them and what arrangements may be made in respect to pay, working hours, and so on, in addition to other health and safety actions that are being taken. So, again, touch base with them, make sure they're okay, listen to their concerns. Some people may not like working from home and may not want to be doing that. So just talk to the employees, maybe have a one-on-one weekly meeting with each employee as well, because some employees will be very reluctant to speak up in a Zoom meeting or whatever about a personal issue that they may be having. So try and make time for the employees so that you get to see how they are coping on a daily basis. Look at your data privacy notices to ensure they adequately address any COVID-19 related data processing. Ensure employees should keep a record of any decision making that happens. You're not going to be able to keep, like the Organisation of Working Time Act might want the breaks effectively, break times effectively. So maybe, if they're able to sign in and out over their phone each day, or if they have to keep just a record at home. Look, I worked this day, and I had these breaks. I mean, there has to be trust, and there has to be, people empowered to do the right thing at this time. And, my experience is that people will do the right thing, and it's just, putting trust into the whole system. Also, another way of measuring that productivity hasn't lapsed is setting objectives for a week of what you expect to be the outputs to be. So then you're able to see that, yes, people are working. It may not be a straight 9 to 5. They may have to take breaks because they've got the children or childcare. So work with them for these situations. We're all learning through this time. So, it's okay to say to your employee, look, I'm learning. I'll get back to you if I haven't got your answer right away. They will only respect you more for that. Another area is employees need to reduce headcount or working hours. We still need headcount, we still need people to work, but we may have to reduce it again. With all businesses feeling the impact on social distancing and other measures adopted to tackle coronavirus, many employees will need to reduce headcount and consider restructuring and other cost-saving measures in order to sustain the business. So a number of areas to consider would be, can the employee be redeployed? Can employees be laid off? Can working hours be reduced? What are the rules around paying employees in these scenarios? So you've got to look at a number of things. Again, the advice would be, if redeployment works, great. And if employees are agreeable and can be trained to carry out duties, it's in more viable parts of the business. Layoff is a measure, as you know, where it's used when an employee does not have work for some of its employees and involves giving employees notice that they are on temporary layoff. Reducing hours is another one, maybe working with the team to see can they all stay at work for less hours. So it's really looking at what you would do in normal circumstances where there wasn't enough work. Layoff may also be applicable in respect to employees who cannot work remotely, as their duties can only be carried out in a particular location, and that location is closed. The legislation, if you have it in your policies and procedures or in your contract or your handbook that layoff in short time is without pay, that is good, and that means you don't have to pay the employee while they're off. But it actually doesn't, it needs to be qualified and quantified. So make sure you have all of this information either in the employee's contract or the employee handbook. Some people you might want to reduce their pay. Another one I came across today, actually, an employer called me that 7 of the employees had accepted a 10% pay cut, but 1 employee hadn't. And what do you do then? So again, you have to get permission to reduce pay. It is, again, a very difficult stage because you're trying to keep the business going. So again, I would appeal to you to talk to any individual that doesn't want to see what actions you can come up with. But definitely, it's very important to be consistent in your approach to all employees. So if this particular employee doesn't end up reducing the pay for this one employee, the other employees are going to be up in arms because they will hear about it. So you need to be consistent. Maybe reduce the hours for the employees so that they're not feeling the pay cuts quite so much. So review contracts, like I said, of employment to establish whether layoff or short time may be appropriate. It may be a case that even where contracts are silent on layoff or short time, employees in the circumstances may be permitted to avail of these options. This is unprecedented times. As long as you can justify your actions and they were fair to all employees, I think you'll be in a good situation. I would say, though, keep a record of any actions you took so that if revenue do come back, and we're hearing that they will come back, to see why all the employees availed of the pandemic unemployment payment, for example. It's important that you have records of the actions you took. So again, I've kind of covered it already, but it's another question that was asked. What if I have work for my employee who is in receipt of the pandemic unemployment payment? Can I bring them back to work? Yes. The employee is on layoff, and as normal, you can take an employee back when work becomes available. So leading on from that, your employee normally works normally earns less than 350 per week and doesn't want to come back to work because of this, what can you do? So an employee should not claim the COVID-19 payment if their employer has not laid them off, or if they were not previously in employment, or if they are still in receipt of employment income, or if their employer takes them back on the payroll. Therefore, if the employer now has work for the employee, they must return to work. The employee should not be profiting from the crisis at the expense of the taxpayer. The employee, in this case, must close their COVID-19 pandemic unemployment payment claim immediately. Claims can be closed via the My Welfare site. Any person who knowingly claims the payment in circumstances where they are not entitled to the payment will be prosecuted. And you may have to spell that point out. It's not nice to spell it out to the employee, but you may have to, so that you have taken the right action. So now we're at the stage, maybe after the 31st of May, where, and I'm giving you the 31st of May date because, and I'll come to that in a minute. So you feel that, you're going to open up again. It's going to be in a much smaller capacity. So you will be making some redundancies. And again, it's very important that a redundancy process is followed. So basically, there are 5 main stages to consider during the redundancy process. There's the preparation, why you're doing it, what's the justification for it. There's the selection, how are you selecting the employees for redundancy. So you might say, I'm going to select last in, first out. Or you might say, I need to retain my top talent for these roles. So I'm going to do an interview process, or I'm going to do based on their performance reviews of the last 2 years. Whatever selection you decide on, make sure you stick to that selection. So, for example, you have an excellent employee in Mark coming, who only started a few weeks ago before the pandemic broke out, and he's proving to be an excellent employee. And you have some people there that are there a long time, and you decide, I want to keep Mark on as well as getting rid of everyone else. But that would be seen as unfair, right? If you have decided to opt for the last in, first out option. So you have to be very careful in how you use your selection. So the notice, employees are entitled to receive a minimum of 2 weeks notice of redundancy. This notice period goes up depending on the period of service. We can talk about that another time. So notice when on layoff or short time. If you have laid off or put on short time work, this means that the employee's contract of employment is temporarily suspended. If you then decide to make the role redundant, you must be reactivated. Reactivate the employee's contract in order to dismiss on grounds of redundancy. Then when your employer gives notice of redundancy, you are entitled to full notice period. If you are made redundant and you are not required to work out your notice, you're entitled to pay in lieu of notice, which is your normal pay in that notice period. So, just follow the process, know what it is, and make sure you use it. Where you're in a situation as an employer where you're unable to pay the redundancy money. Now, again, to qualify for redundancy, the employee must have 2 years service, and then they get 2 weeks for every year of service plus 1 additional week. So, if people are with you less than a year, you still use a process to terminate them, but they don't qualify for redundancy payments. But where they do qualify for redundancy payments and you as the employer haven't got the ability to pay them, you must complete and submit Form RP50 online, print a copy of it off and complete form and have both the employer and the employee sign it. Give the form to the employee to post the signed form to the redundancy and insolvency section of the DEASP. Include a letter with the form from an accountant or solicitor if possible, stating that the employer is unable to pay the redundancy lump sum and is accepting liability for 100% of the lump sum. So you need to make sure that, you are not in a position to pay it. Otherwise, revenue will check up to see why you didn't pay the payment to the employee. Document evidence is important in this. There's other areas to consider, if there is collective redundancies, if you've got 5 employees where 21 or 49 are employed or be made redundant, that's a collective redundancy scenario. And it goes up and the scale goes up. So you need to make sure that you've told the Department of Employment that you will be making those redundancies. So I mentioned about the 31st of May. So after 4 weeks, really, an employee can give notice of an intention to claim redundancy, right? So they would write, the employee who has been laid off or for 4 to 6 weeks is entitled to serve his or her employer, in normal times, his or her employer, with notice of intention to claim redundancy using the RP9 form. However, then there is a counter notice from the employee. So if an employee serves notice, the employer can serve counter notice that it will be possible to offer not less than 13 weeks continuous employment without any period of layoff or short time within 4 weeks of the date of the employees giving that notice. If the employee cannot guarantee that they will have this work, the employee is made redundant. That said, the government has now forbidden employees who have been laid off or put on short time during the crisis from making redundancy claims until the 31st of May 2020. This is at the moment, or it could be an extended period. So that's good to know, okay? So there's no redundancies until at least after the 31st of May. So again, one more area is employees. You had interviewed for new employees and they were due to commence, but there was no work for them. So again, issues for the employers to consider. Have both parties signed a contract of employment? Can start date be deferred or can the contract be withdrawn? So if the contract was verbal and you hadn't got around to that, that's an easier contract to break if you want. But where a contract has been signed by both parties, a contractual relationship of employment exists and cannot be challenged or withdrawn unilaterally by one party. So both parties can, however, agree to defer the start date or to be withdrawn from the contract altogether if the circumstances, in the circumstances, an open and reasonable conversation should take place, and it could go a long way for the potentially new employee to say, look, I totally understand. You might, if you had a contract signed, again, I would say the employer should consider paying the employer a sum equal to the notice period under the contract in order to terminate the contract in accordance with its terms. And normal contracts are in probation period 1 week's notice. So that might be something you'd like to consider doing. So if you have any outstanding people that you hire, right, it would be a good time now to do an audit, see who you had agreed to take on for the summer months, etc., and contact all those potential new employees to tell them what the situation is. Right. That's it really. I just want to then cover off the business continuity voucher, which is so it's a really good benefit that the government have out there right now and offered right now. So the Dungarvan and West Waterford Chamber have teamed up with Waterford Local Enterprise Office to assist you directly in getting access to a free 2,500 worth of professional consultation through this business continuity voucher. So this is free money to help you plan to save, stabilise and grow your business at this difficult time. They're telling us there's no catches, so I'm saying there's no catches, no repayments and no match funding. The money is there to help you explore new angles to help your business trading. For example, under financial planning, expert, HR advice, marketing advice, ICT advice, futuristic retail mentoring, lean advice, etc. I suppose from my point of view, I would say working from home will be a new kind of norm going forward. There might have been employers in the past that said, no, we cannot let you work from home. We don't have the facilities to do that. But now you're asking them to work from home. So they will challenge you possibly to say, look, you told us we couldn't before, but then you told us we could during this. So is there any way we continue with a working from home situation? So a working from home policy would be a very good thing to probably get in place. Also communication with remote working and to establish those. And what are the best practices in working remotely? So I think, contact the Dungarvan West Waterford Chamber, find out more about the business continuity voucher, and they handle all the paperwork for you in that too. So it's really good. And you will be able to get access to some of the best consultants in the business for your situation, your requirements. Thank you very much. And again, if you have any queries, feel free to contact me on 086 822 5448 or by email mryan@righthandhr.ie.